Hi guys, my name is Brittany and thank you for joining me on my channel where I discuss topics on spirituality, emotional well-being, and energy work. So if you have interest in these topics, please give that subscribe button a love tap and hit that bell to be notified of future videos. Also, if you'd like to reference back to any of the information discussed in this video, I will have a link to the blog post on it below in the description box, where you will be able to find the main points discussed in writing. And while you are there, be sure to subscribe to my email list to receive our weekly newsletter on topics on emotional wellness and healthy lifestyle. So in today's video, I will be discussing tips for safety practices when performing home visits. This will not be my typical content since I have transitioned out of the field of clinical social work to go towards a more holistic healing and teaching path that is in alignment with my spiritual journey. But before I get into that fun stuff, I wanted to share in some helpful topics to help others practice a safe and fulfilling career if you find yourself working in human services or clinical work. With that said, I am not licensed as a clinical social worker, and this information is not a form of clinical consultation, training, supervision, or advice. Always adhere to your state policies and professional ethics and training requirements when it comes to your work and being of service to others in these professional roles. So to get started, I've had the privilege of performing home visits when supervising family visits for those involved in foster care and when working in public housing in an inner city. I have also collaborated with other helping professionals such as case managers and probation officers who were performing home visits when I worked as a psychotherapist to support mutual clients' care. Before we go any further, I want to offer a trigger warning that there will be references of violence, so if this information does not suit your needs, please go ahead and click off of this video now. You may have already heard stories on the news of hearing of social workers and human service providers being attacked and even killed when doing home visits, especially when doing welfare checks on children, when having to remove children from the home, or being involved in situations involving domestic violence, as well as working with individuals with severe persistent mental illness. In a previous graduating year where I attended grad school, there was a social work grad student who was attacked with a chainsaw by a client when doing a home visit, and the student did not survive the brutal assault. There was also another grad student who was held against their will at a group home by a youth while performing a home visit who was attempting to sexually assault them. With these type of incidences threatening helping professionals' welfare, I think it is helpful to have these discussions and how to navigate them beforehand so we can be better prepared to address potentially life-threatening circumstances with as much competency as possible. I know when I was led to work in human services, I was young, inexperienced, naive, and underprepared for what could happen, or knowing how to honor my intuition and boundaries to keep myself safe, as well as knowing self-defense or quick exit strategies. So I hope this discussion will be helpful for some different insight and tips on how to navigate certain situations. With that being said, let's jump into this video where we will discuss safety measures related to minimizing threats to our safety before doing a home visit and navigating what to do while at a home visit if concerns arise. That starts us off with tip number 1, become familiar with the neighborhoods you are working in. When I completed practicum working in public housing in an inner city, one of the first things I was advised was not to walk around the premises alone due to high rates of violence, homicide, deadly domestic violence occurrences, kidnappings, drug use, and gang-related crime and shootings. When working in certain public housing developments, regardless if the person had no concerning behavioral history, we would always go in threes, and a male social worker had to be present due to the high rates of drug use and violent crimes. However, there were 3 other housing developments I also had the privilege of working in that were designated for seniors and those with disabilities, and these neighborhoods within the same city did not come with the same concern, and the social worker there would often do home visits alone. So there can be significant differences within the neighborhoods within the same city that we need to educate ourselves on. When working in a different and smaller city, it was most common for social workers and family specialists and case managers to do these home visits alone. This leads us to tip number 2, call ahead to remind clients of their home visit. When performing home visits for residents who had a history of violent or concerning behavior, these meetings were always arranged beforehand, and a phone call would be made to the client right before going to their home to avoid startling them or triggering defensive behavior if they forgot about the appointment. These phone calls made ahead of time were also a time to assess if the client presented to be under the influence and what their current mental health state was, and whether they were experiencing any significant mental health episode. Tip number 3 goes hand in hand with the last tip of calling ahead and assessing the client's mental health status and behavior. You can give the client a call before doing the home visit to do a brief evaluation over the phone to assess their current level of functioning by gaining more information about their mental health status, such as how their thought process and reasoning skills are, and if they are within normal limits. Also assessing the clarity and organization of thought, coherence in speech, how their functioning has been of lately, such as when was the last time they ate, showered, talked to or saw loved ones, used recreational drugs, attended scheduled appointments or groups, or took their medication. If everything seems to be within normal limits, you can continue the visit, and if not, determine the next course of action, which leads us to tip number 4, how to respond to concerning behaviors before or after you arrived to the home visit. If there is concerning behavior or the client's reasoning and judgment is impaired or they are under the influence, remove yourself immediately from the situation or do not attend the home visit. If you have already arrived, let the person know that you're going to excuse yourself and go back to your car and that you need to leave, but you're going to give them a call to finish the meeting over the phone. Then you can call them to get a better assessment of their functioning, and if there are concerns, you can let them know that it appears they're having a tough day, and you can express support and compassion, letting them know that you're here to help support them and see how you can help out with their needs that day. Then determine what type of support and intervention is needed, such as utilizing welfare checks with trained interventionists or local authorities, or revert to their safety plan if there are concerning areas showing up, and what steps were outlined to do in the event of that concern. Some caseworkers have the approval to provide clients transportation and to go to the hospital or a crisis center with them to ensure they get checked in and their mental health needs are served. However, it will have to be considered one's level of comfort, training, agency policy, client and staff safety, and the client's level of functioning. But when in doubt, call local authorities and meet them at the location for emergency or crisis services if you're working in such a role. Tip number 5, care coordination with other helping professionals. Work with the client's mental health and healthcare providers to collaborate on their care and gain greater insight into healthcare needs and mental health challenges that the client is enduring. And if you are the mental health provider working with other helping professionals who are doing the home visits, you can ensure that there is an ROI on file and get consent by the client to share about the general scope of their mental health history and create safety plans to address how to support clients who may be enduring episodes of mania or psychosis or suicidal or homicidal ideation. By collaborating care with other helping professionals, this can help mitigate crisis or unhelpful intervention with local authorities that can exacerbate a mental health condition or episode, and instead get psychiatric support and services in place as soon as possible to ensure everyone's safety. An example of this is a probation officer shared that during a home visit, the client was not cooperating and would not let them in, and they would not come out of their home to meet with them, and they felt this was a cause for police intervention and arrest because it was in violation of their probation requirements. But when they remembered their mental health history involving paranoid ideation and persecutory delusions from authority figures, the probation officer was instead able to contact a crisis intervention trained officer, also known as a CIT officer, who is trained at addressing mental health matters in a non-confrontational manner to help lower distress, increase rapport and compassion, and aid the individual to psychiatric care in a non-threatening or forceful manner, which can go a long way in reducing potential for post-traumatic stress responses if faced with forced and improper response to their level of functioning and mental health needs. This probation officer, who knew this client's mental health history, was able then to discern the difference between unlawful behaviors and non-compliance versus a mental health episode or crisis that the person was actually experiencing. Tip number 6, when possible, remain outside during a home visit or meet in a neutral meeting place when there is a history of safety concerns. It's encouraged to go in pairs when and if possible, and when arriving to the home, you can remain outside on the front steps and stand a few feet back from the door and the client to ensure safety. Some of the concerning behaviors exhibited were often due to mental health challenges and not related to criminal behavior. Criminal-based behavior is often not tolerated by agencies, but there were exceptions made if concerning situations would arise like this at times due to mental health problems to help tend to those struggling with severe persistent mental illness. When there was a history of safety concerns with clients and a home visit could be avoided, we would try to have them meet us instead at the main office in a neutral setting with another social worker present during the meeting. If there wasn't another staff available to be present, then you could try to find an office closest to the front desk so the receptionist is in hearing distance, and you could keep the door partially open with the staff member sitting closest to the door to exit quickly if needed. Preferably set with a large table in between you and the client to act as a buffer if any assaulting gesture occurs. It's also helpful to try to schedule these meetings during times of the day where there will not be other community members and clients in close proximity to provide privacy and confidentiality, especially when the door is not closed. Sometimes meeting in an office setting isn't an option due to clients who may be dealing with pest infestations, such as bed bugs, lice, or cockroaches, and until they receive treatment for their housing unit, it can pose a risk of spreading these pests into new areas. Also, when it is winter and it's too cold to remain outside due to pest infestations or concerning behaviors, you can explore your agency's policy on doing check-ins via the phone or an online meeting. Tip number 7, have conversations around appropriate interaction and establish healthy boundaries and clear consequences with clients who exhibit recurring concerning behavior. It is important to have conversations and set healthy boundaries with clients when concerning behaviors arise, whether this is due to mental health challenges, substance use, or personality factors. You can provide information about how the agency policy addresses recurring problems like this and how it may negatively impact the resources or services they are receiving to support their quality of life. You can then encourage the clients to work with their case managers to find psychiatric services and substance use treatment to manage their healthcare needs and help them reduce any occurrences that may impact or jeopardize the services they're receiving. Another important thing to address around this is helping them find transportation to their appointments, as this can be a major barrier to ongoing participation in services. Tip number 8, know who's approved to be at the home visit. The next thing to know when doing home visits is to know who is approved to be present during the visit, and anyone who is not must leave upon your arrival. And if there is refusal, then you will have to use your discretion to continue the visit or to end it, but this would often lead to the end of a visit, as clients are most often well informed of their need to get others approved to be present during visitations or home visits. Tip number 9, maintain situational awareness, assess all exits, and sit closest to the exit. Another helpful thing to do while at a home visit is to remain close to the door. Sit with your back up against a wall so no one can walk up behind you, and be aware of all the exits and any obstructions that may be in your way if you need to quickly remove yourself. You can also ask that a chair is placed by the door so you can sit there during the visit, and if there is any suspicion of drug or alcohol use, the home visit should be ended immediately. If there are any behavioral or mental health concerns, you are entitled to end the visit and call any additional support staff to intervene if necessary. And if there is any aggressive, rude, or abusive behavior towards you or reluctance to participate in the reason for the home visit, you are entitled to end the visit and not subject yourself to this type of treatment. Tip number 10. Have community and emergency contact phone numbers saved to quickly access. Make sure you have all the phone numbers easily accessible to the local police department, emergency services, emergency psychiatric services, crisis centers and hotlines, phone numbers of the management team and your chain of command at your agency, as well as the client's emergency contacts, and to any other case managers or healthcare providers in the event of needing additional or emergency assistance, or to inform others of the client's current state of functioning. Which leads us to tip number 11, coordinating care with the client and developing safety plans with their family members and other helping professionals. Have releases of information on file to talk to the client's emergency contacts and those they've identified as their social supports that they consent to have a part of their care. By having this established support system for the client, this can make it helpful for their loved ones to be able to reach out to you and share any updates on their level of functioning or concerns. This also provides the opportunity to reach out to their loved ones to gain greater insight into your client's level of functioning or their needs if they're not responding to outreach. By establishing this support system, it can help assist with putting into place services and resources to help mitigate crisis, harm, or deterioration in functioning. Another helpful practice is to develop safety plans for the client, their loved ones, other helping professionals, and their medical and mental health providers. In the safety plan, you can include things like triggers, identify points of contact for crisis intervention, de-escalation and coping skills, and family contact information, and make sure everyone has a copy of this plan. Tip number 12, seek additional training. Additional training that may be helpful is training in self-defense and safety protocols, cultural competency, communication and conflict resolution skills, mental health first aid, crisis intervention, psychopathology, training how to assess risk and identify signs of abuse or neglect, and training to support assessment skills of mental health status and substance use. Even if some of these areas of training are not fully related to the role that you are in, and of course always work within your role and level of competency, this information is still invaluable to have for anyone working in human services as added measures of personal and client safety until trained professional intervention can be involved if needed. Tip number 13, trust your intuition. Learn how to attune and listen to your inner radar. For some, this comes as an inner voice or an inner knowing, and for others it will be a felt sense or a visceral feeling that something is off. Many individuals have shared stories that they felt a gut feeling about an environment or a person before something troubling happened or before they were assaulted, or they could sense something telling them to not go somewhere they were planning on, only later to find out that some type of a distressing situation occurred where they were supposed to be. So it goes without saying, never enter a home when you have a gut feeling it is not safe. If it is a pressing feeling, do not chalk this up as paranoia or hypervigilance, and end the visit or remove yourself as soon as you become aware of these red flags. I don't recall discussions within my professional or academic career where we discussed intuition and tuning in to listen to our gut feelings until I met my mentor much later in my career, which he still reminds me often how to lean into my intuition and use introspection to explore what is going on in my inner world, especially when working with others. This has been such a helpful thing to consider and has aided in building self-trust, discernment, and self-knowledge. It may be helpful to take some time to reflect on past experiences where you received an intuitive knowing and understanding and how you received it, what you learned from it, what it helped you with, and what happened if you did or did not listen to it. Also, if you have unresolved trauma, it can create feelings of hypervigilance and negative distortions of the world and others, which makes it difficult to discern true threat versus a trauma trigger. And if this is the case, my hope is you will take care of your mental health and seek treatment to help resolve this so you can reconnect with your inner source of wisdom. And that leads us to the last tip of this video, tip number 14, involving your support system. For each shift, I would let a loved one know what time my shift started and stopped. I made sure to give them the phone number to my supervisor to contact if they did not hear from me after an expected time or if I did not arrive home. If there was a particular concerning family or client I was working with, I would inform my supervisor to address these concerns and determine my comfort level of continuing to work with them, or we would discuss safety planning. When there were safety concerns, my supervisor would know what time I would be there and I would request they call me after a certain time to check in. Often too, it was only until after an uncomfortable or concerning situation happened that I received coaching and training on how to navigate those types of situations in order to address them through best practice for future occurrences. For any human service professional who may not have the assertiveness skills and boundaries developed to communicate their needs or feelings of discomfort, the time is now to grow and cultivate the courage to find your voice and set those boundaries. Once we face the discomfort of advocating and setting boundaries for ourselves, we receive the inner gifts of witnessing our own power, strength, and self-worth, which also helps those you serve to do the same. There are many ways to be of service, but it must be done in a way that you feel safe and comfortable with. I know in these safety videos we are going down the darker side of things when it comes to choosing the positive path of being of service, but when we address these challenges together and the impacts and demands this work has on a person's psyche and health, we can work in solidarity to support one another and create safer work environments for all. I would love to hear in the comments any other safety tips and practices that were not mentioned that may be helpful for other helping professionals to know of so we can continue supporting one another and gaining greater knowledge. And if you work with others, I would love to hear about the positive rewards and experiences that you receive by getting to be of service. So as we come to an end of this video, if you guys found this helpful, please like and subscribe and be sure to share this with anyone you know who may benefit from this discussion as well. Also be on the lookout for my upcoming videos on coping with vicarious trauma when working in human services and safety practices when working in insanitary environments. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and my compassion and gratitude is with you all.